it's also just, I guess, as men or just as a person in general, like if you're wanting to better your life, if you're wanting to do better and to be better, then I think then you've got to take change. You've got to have action.
Hello and welcome to Share.care's What is Manly radio show and podcast. Men feel more lonely, lost, and not useful in society than ever in history. Males are not attaching to school, work, or women. What it means to be a man appears lost. Is there a framework for being manly that we can unearth?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
G'day Tinokuda, how are you?
I'm good, Damien. How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Loving this world we live in now. I mean, COVID wasn't great for everyone, but it's certainly great in the way we can connect around the planet now. It's lovely to be able to talk to you. You're in the UK. I'm in Australia. You're morning. I'm in the evening looking at some dark skies.
Yeah, it's very weird. I talked to a few people in the US and I have that same experience. I'm going to bed and they're just waking up. So yeah, it's COVID did something nice so we can all connect from different places in the world, but don't take me back to it. I know I'm okay with that.
No, well, you did all right. We had the lockdown capital of the world here in Victoria. We had a
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. But then you guys were having like we saw photos of you guys like having raves early and stuff like that. You guys opened up before us. It looked like a lot
yeah.
of fun. Or was that New Zealand?
Yeah, well, New
One of
Zealand
the
did too, I think, as well. But we did. Where I am, I was down here at the beach house, which was pretty cool. I'm only 10 minutes from the beach. So I got to wander down
Oh,
yeah. So that was within the 5K radius that we had, and you're allowed to go for exercise, so that technically counted as exercise. So it wasn't too bad.
it wasn't. Yeah, I can imagine. So in the sun, going to the beach, going to the ocean. Yeah, I can swim as far as I can into the water. It's just 5K. It counts.
Just gotta watch out for the sharks. We send them out to get you.
Yeah. If you exceed your 5K,
Yeah.
sharks come for you.
Exactly. It wasn't too bad either from because some of my clients were essential services, so I got to drive around a lot when everyone else was in lockdown and curfews and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. But it was also really good from my son's perspective because with the homeschooling, and I set it up so that I've got my desk and then have a fireplace and then his desk. So he was actually studying right where I could see, so I'm working and he's there, and I could hear
Yeah.
how he responded to the teacher's questions and things like stuff that I never would have actually ever experienced. So that was really cool from that
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been actually. And I guess even just still a bit of a bonding time, like you're with your son all day, you know what I mean? So you get that time with him too.
Yeah, it was exactly right. It was we got some. I mean, I know some parents probably don't want that time with their children, but from my perspective, it was certainly enlightening. We got to spend a bit of time. I got to give him a bit of guidance on to help with his study and how to organize his time and things like that. And so I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. But I mean, I wasn't I said I got to move around as well and near the beach, so
Yeah.
it wasn't everybody. I wasn't stuck in an apartment, let's say, like some people.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't like we had a garden. It was a smallish garden, but it was still a garden and had grass. We could go outside. Me and my brother played basketball a lot during COVID, in the back garden. But I couldn't have imagined being in a flat, like having no sort of space to just escape. Like
Yeah.
having somewhere outdoors was probably quite necessary in that time.
Yeah, true. Very true. Also for the audience, sorry, we got to get carried away there. For the audience, who I
Oh
have with
yeah, so
is Tinokuda Bvunzawabaya, if I pronounce that correctly. He's a
yeah, correctly.
Zimbabwean living in Great Britain. He has a master's in social work. He has a podcast called Black and Raww, which explores Black masculinity and questions what it means to be a Black man in society. And he loves to talk about society, politics, movies, TV, technology, personal improvement, and apparently COVID. So
That also includes politics as well, COVID. So
and some
carry on.
yeah, politics. Oh, sorry, yeah, I've got that on my list. I didn't read it out. So yeah, politics. Got to be careful talking about politics. Can be very polarizing, or you can be polarized talking about what we're talking about too at the moment. Which is what we're here to talk about is what is manly, trying to find a framework, because there's a lot of men feeling lost, lonely, not having a feeling useful in society. What have you seen, like, in your area more broadly, and then we can narrow it down to specific things? But what have you noticed in that space?
Oh, thank you, Damien. And yeah, that's a really good sort of start opening. And I guess what I've seen is, I don't know, I think there is a lot of mental health within, especially within the Black community, that maybe isn't addressed as much. I know that, sometimes you hear that, oh, someone's got depression and stuff like that, and someone's like, oh, you're just feeling sad. That's not what it is. Like sometimes there's a dismissal of the emotions and of what somebody's going through in terms of with their mental health. And so I guess that's one thing I've definitely seen in terms of within the Black community. But I think also just as men, I think we can be quite isolated within ourselves. I know there's like men that are fathers and that they maybe don't then get to spend as much time with their boys and stuff like that. And even though I'm sure it's lovely to be with your partner all the time and stuff like that, I think sometimes there can be a loneliness because women always have their groups. They always have their gal pals and stuff like that. But as men, there's a lot of the times where it's just, you can for your family and stuff like that. I mean, I don't have a family yet, but I'm just speaking on what I've heard or seen. And I think there's a really
Pretty
high
sure you might have had a
statistic
dad
about.
and a mum though.
Yeah, I do have a dad and a mum. Yeah.
Just putting it out there. Maybe it was a second
Yeah.
coming or something. I'm Catholic. I can make those jokes.
Gonna get me off my point, Damien. I'm gonna be laughing this whole time. I love it though. um,
But yeah,
but
you're
yeah,
saying the men's groups are missing for the girls. They have kind of get together, do their coffees, and girls groups, girls gyms, girls rock climbing, I've heard about
yeah,
groups. Lots of
there's a
that.
lot. And the thing is, though, I think there are those groups out there for men because obviously there's sports groups that you can go to. I'm sure there's other things where, like,
What if you're not a
there's people
sporty
like going
person?
to. I guess if you're not a sporty person, I don't know, maybe you go to a shooting range. But I guess if you're not a shooting range sort of
Well, we
person,
don't have
if you're not
guns
in
in
the US
Australia.
as well, yeah, neither neither do we here unless you get them illegally.
You talk to
Um,
Americans a lot,
but
don't you?
yeah, talk to Americans a lot, pretty much. I don't know. I get, what the thing is though. Then I'd say go and do something artsy, but then that comes into the realm of, oh, is that not a bit girly? Like some people might be like, oh, what am I gonna go and do? Like go do some pottery, go do some painting, go do something creative,
I don't know, if
and
you've watched
like.
Ghost, doing some pottery might be a good thing. I mean, I'm showing my age here. I don't know if you've seen that Patrick movie.
No idea. No, I mean, people like Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen does pottery, so
Yeah,
you can make it cool for men to do pottery.
yeah.
But I don't know. I guess there's just, and I guess with that as well, there's sort of the stereotype of, oh, I need to do something manly. I need to do, something like I need to play rugby. I need to go and, hit something. Or to be fair, you can go to boxing, you can go to martial arts if you're, but that's still sporty, isn't it? We're doing it for non-sporty people. But I think for non-sporty people, I guess just because it doesn't seem manly doesn't mean you can't go and do it and find other men that enjoy it. Because I'm sure there are lots of men that enjoy stuff which isn't sporty. You know what I mean? You just got to go and find them. But then that's hard, isn't it? And then you're putting yourself out there. And I think as men, putting ourselves out there sometimes is vulnerability. And I know vulnerability is the big thing in which, you know, even for me at times, it's really hard to be vulnerable. So I know that maybe putting yourself out there ends up being vulnerable. And then you're like, actually, I really don't like this feeling. I'm just going to retreat back into my safety comfort net of my family.
Can you
And, you
talk
know,
about that?
then I think,
This you're
go
saying, you
on.
just said it's really hard to be vulnerable. Can you explain what you mean by that? I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, I'll give an example. There's plenty of times where maybe I need to express my emotions with my girlfriend, and you sort of just said it's like, I don't really feel comfortable saying this, or like the words are sort of slowly dripping out, but like not coherently because you're trying not to say it, but then you're trying not to feel that vulnerable, you know, because I guess for us as men, we've always been told that, you know, we need to be strong, we need to be stoic, we need to be grizzly bear. Um, but like we're all human at the end of the day. We all have our emotions. We all cry. We all, you know, want to be hugged. You know, we talked about COVID, like, you know, going without hugs, going without people, was quite, you know, I think damaging for humans. And so I think, you know, as men, we don't want to that facade of everything's great. I'm stoic. You can't read me. You don't know my next move. But you know, you could be crying inside, but like you can be tearing yourself up inside because you're not, because you're not, you can speak, but you find it difficult to speak because then that puts you in that vulnerable position. It then goes against all your social conditioning in
Yeah.
terms of you should be this, you should be that. And so that can be a hard thing to then sort of deal with, you know?
Do you think girls want that? From that perspective, because I hear that and people say, "Oh, you want to be vulnerable," but then at the same token, I hear the opposite saying they want them to be strong. So where do you draw the line? Is it, you know, because you know, if you're walking down a dark alley, you know, unless you're going out with a Lucy Liu or someone that knows kung fu or something like that, you know, generally she'll want you to be that protective person, that primal thing kicks in. And where does that line get drawn? If you start being vulnerable all the time, all of a sudden she's thinking, maybe he can't protect me in those moments.
Yeah, it's always such an awkward one, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah,
like women are like, why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you saying what's on your mind? Why are
yeah,
you just being a recluse, you know?
yeah.
Um, and then at the other end, it's like, oh, what, he cries too much? You know what I mean? You see the things on TikTok and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, he's crying too much. But you know what? I think generally at the end of the day, um, I think as men, maybe there's a balance that needs to be struck.
Mm,
But I think we're too far on the other end of not showing and not talking,
hmm.
rather than like obviously there's going to be men out there that express their emotion all the time and maybe that are crying a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I wouldn't want men to feel ashamed because they're doing that.
Mm,
Um, but I think maybe there is a balance to be struck in terms of that. There are times, because at the end of the day, I think also what's brilliant about us as men is that naturally we're like problem solvers. Naturally, like if
mm.
your woman comes to you, she's like, "Oh, I've got this problem" and stuff like that, and then you're there like, "Okay, let me fix it." But I guess also in that terms, women also don't want us to fix their problems. They
Yeah,
already know
they
the
just want
answer.
you to shut up and
They
listen.
just they yeah, they just want us to listen. But like in terms of men being problem solvers, being on the front foot, you know, making plans, you know,
Mm,
that's also what makes women attracted to us as men. So I think you can have that assertiveness, and you know, being the problem solver, making the plans. I
mm,
think you can do both. I think you can have that, but then you can also be vulnerable when you need to be vulnerable. You can pick your moments to be vulnerable. Um, and maybe that's just how we end up doing it. But then if you're picking your moments to be vulnerable, and then your woman, or your partner is still then being like, oh, is this the guy that I really want? Then maybe then she's not mature enough to be like, actually, this my man can show multiple facades of himself and still be something that I'm attracted to. Because I think a woman that understands the struggle that men go through to share their emotions and to be vulnerable will know that, okay, when he is being vulnerable, this is really hard for him. So I should be there supporting him, not ridiculing him.
Is that, I mean, obviously there's a component of that is choosing the right person, which is a completely different topic. And I can put my hand up to say choosing the wrong person, in times in my life, there's been partners I've gone out with where, I just knew I shouldn't be going out with this person and stayed way too long in the relationship. It's like, yeah, but the sex is really good. It's like,
yeah, that will keep you. That will keep you.
Yeah, exactly. Blood's gone to the wrong part of your body. But from that, what I'm wondering is, again, from this, use the word manly, but maybe courageousness is the right word. And because I look at it, and I've got a friend of mine, I can't identify who it is because we have laws in Australia where you can't identify people that are part of certain court cases, and he's got a parenting matter going on, and I've had to carry him kicking and screaming just to take action and do the right thing to get access to his children. And for me, it's been exhausting because I couldn't imagine myself, if I was put in that same situation, massive, it would just be like, I'm metaphorically saying that, but just to get him to respond to things, to prepare affidavits, things like that was just, it was pulling teeth, and he was in a really, really good position. I mean, he could have been in a really bad position. I mean, he's in a bad position because his ex ran off with the children and took them, but he's managed to get them back in a lot quicker. Still not over yet, but getting him to take that action was really difficult because he was going to collapse. And where does that fit within that side of things? And we're going, because I look at it, if you take the extreme, I mean, you look at the guys over in Ukraine at the moment. If they're running down there and get a splinter as they're running or something like that, and go and start crying, it's not really going to be in anyone's best interest. Certainly not, And I know that's an extreme example, and I'm exaggerating for the purpose of that. Where do you draw the line on that? When you go, okay, I've got to, I'm going to use the word man up, but it just shows some courage, maybe, and just go, hey, this is tough. I've just got to push my way through. How do you draw the line on that, and where is it?
I guess like the men in Ukraine, yeah, you definitely couldn't do that. But I guess,
but I look at my friend and go, I just don't understand it. If I hadn't have been there dragging him, kicking and screaming, he would have completely lost access to his children, full stop. And to me, that's like, I couldn't imagine that as a father.
Yeah, and you know what? I think as men, like, we sort of have the balls to be confident even when it's not like our strong suit, or even when, like, I think there's a statistic, I can't remember what it is, in terms of that a larger percentage of men will go for the jobs they are unqualified for, and women will go for less jobs that they are. So women, if they're overqualified for the jobs, they're less likely to go for it because there isn't that confidence of, let me just do this. But for men, if they're underqualified for the job, they will go for it even more. I'm butchering that statistic. But so I think in terms of, for us as men, like, we have to sort of have that courageous and sort of confidence in us to just be like, listen, I'm just going to charge on here and do this. And then I know that it's a bit contradictory, but I think I always think of things as a balance, like that we need to have a balance between being emotional, being like emotional, having emotional intelligence, being aware, but then also we have to use what we have as men to our advantage. And I don't think there's anything wrong with us being the bulls that, society says that we are, you know what I mean? Like, we need to sometimes just be courageous and suck it up and do something, because especially for the guy you are talking about, I'm not a father yet, but I always have conversations with my brother and sister about, like, oh, if I would want custody of my children if the wife, because usually the women get the custody majority of the time, and there's good reasons for it. But I think sometimes men are overlooked in that process. I was always be like, I would want to see my kids. I'd want to spend time with my kids. But then there are some men that are not like that. So yeah, I think we've just got to use all the tools we have available to us to be like, okay, at this moment, I can be courageous, I can be strong, I can be determined, I can do all the things that makes being a man being a man. But then at the same time, you know, like the guys in Ukraine, I think they have to be really strong and really tough. But afterwards, they really could do with therapy, or they really could do with something that could help them out. Oh, hold on. Bear with me just a second. There's someone at my door. Back now. Apologies.
Yeah, for the audience, Tinokuda just ordered pizza and he's just gone and got it delivered.
Morning pizza, guys. It's the way forward. If you're not doing it, then something's wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was from that perspective, where do you draw the line? Because I look at my friend, and said, I'm fortunate I wasn't in that situation. My son, his mum and I, we agreed on the share time when we didn't stay together. So I wasn't in that position where I had to do that, because we agreed and got orders. And so from that perspective, it was, do you, where do you draw the line and go, okay, I need help, but at the same token too, I need to decide, I need help, but this time, but right now I need to stand up. How do you work that out?
I think you've definitely got to have sort of the self-awareness of like where you're at that point. You've definitely got to, because I don't know the situation obviously that your friend was going through, but I don't know whether maybe he was still dealing with the shock of like, oh, I'm gonna have to be a single father. Like the mom isn't, she, like, they're gonna have to come and live with me, and like maybe that like terrified him, because like for men, I think for women, there's the whole empowerment thing, which is nothing wrong with that at all. But like you see a lot of like, oh, I'm a single mom, I can do it, I can do this, but you never hear from single dads. Like, so, and I'm sure they're out there, maybe just not in a large percentage, but you never hear from them. So like, you don't really know what in being a single dad entails. Whereas single moms, there's loads of dialogue and conversations about that. So I don't know whether your friend was just in a moment where he was like, crap, I'm just gonna have to be a single dad.
Moment, if it was a moment. So.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things, because he had the children with him most of the time, and then she grabbed him and went, and
so he was already dealing with them.
Yeah, so he had those children. It was kind of like, and that's where. But I was just trying to understand, and I still can't understand that mentality of, okay, right now I don't have a chance. I don't have the opportunity. If I really want this, I don't have the opportunity to go, I can't not perform. I've just got to put that aside and perform. I love it. This is well before your time, because you're a young fella and I'm old. I'm older than I look. I'm 50.
Oh, wow. You're looking young, though,
I take care of my skin. I got in touch with my, I can do that. But there's a famous psychologist, motivational person, Wayne Dyer, and he's written a number of books, but he talked about when he was younger and started his practice, and he was operating out of his home, and he had all these really wealthy women coming in. They come with their Gucci bags and their Porsches and stuff like that, and they drive up to the house and they do their sessions and go. But he said next door was the neighbor. Now, she had this ridiculous amount of kids, something like 14 kids or something. And he's looking at, and she was just constantly flat out. And he was talking over the fence to her one day, and he says, like, how is it you've got all these kids? How is it that you haven't had a mental breakdown? And she goes, well, if I could just get some of these kids out of the way, I might have time to have a mental breakdown. And I'm just wondering, from that type of things, do you think maybe we've just got too much time on our hands, where we're spending too much time thinking about things and not just getting on with it?
Yeah, I think there can be an element to that, to be fair, because yeah, for that woman, like
Mm,
she was just in like probably flight or fight modes, like
mm,
just like I have to provide for all these kids and
mm.
get them. I couldn't 14, I could not even imagine what that would
You know,
entail.
I like kids too, but
Like
not that many.
yeah, no, 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 and no wonder why she had no time for a mental breakdown, because you've got nowhere to rest for yourself. You know what I mean? You've got
Yeah.
nowhere just to be like, oh crap, damn, I'm just being swallowed up by this. But I think for men, I
Mm,
think for us, like I think there is a point where you just need to be like, right, I'm taking action. I need to
mm,
go and do it, like because I think that's also what is like I always sort of say to myself, like sometimes when I'm just like, you know, like sometimes when you're feeling sorry for yourself and you don't want to do something, like I'm always just saying it's like, okay, it's valid why I'm feeling this way, but what am I gonna do about it? And I think
mm,
that's then where you have to be like, because I don't think there's anything, and I think it's actually healthy to acknowledge why you're feeling a certain way and why you're not taking action. But then that's the point then when you're like, okay, but
mm,
how can I take action? You know, what can I do about my situation to make it better? And
mm,
I think that's also, I think as men, we are problem solvers. We like to have problems, but maybe we don't think about why the problem exists rather than just let's just fix it. And I think also knowing why we're feeling a certain way can then help us with the solution even more, because you can try and fix a problem, but you're like, actually, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling like I have no control over my life? It's because of this. It's because of that. And if you take that time to think, then you can then have action, and then you can even make a better plan, and you can even
mm.
be better at kicking ass. You know what I mean?
And is it? I mean, because when you talk about that, and you mentioned about feeling sorry for yourself. I was just making that note then, because I relate to that. I mean, back in the day, I remember when I was young, in my car, which had a tape deck. So I don't know if you know what tape decks are, but it had a
Yeah,
tape
I know what a tape deck is,
deck.
but
Sorry.
it is also past my time as well. I had a CD player in my car.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't have
I had a
Bluetooth at
tape
one
deck in my
point.
that's and I remember I was sitting outside my apartment, um, in my car, listening to this. I can't remember what the title of the song was, but it was something like "Why Won't Anybody Love Me?" And I didn't have a girlfriend at the time or anything like that. And I'd play the song. I hit rewind to the start again and play it again and again. I'm bawling my eyes out in this car, going, why does my life suck? Why?
Oh,
Yeah, I know. It's oh, poor Damien. But when we talk about this, feeling, sorry for yourself, I mean, I was making myself feel sorry for myself. Is that, is there an element of that? Is there a balance where we need to find and go, okay, yep, acknowledge the feelings, and I completely agree with that. But how do we take that step to go, okay, I need to actually do something about this?
yeah, I definitely think we can make ourselves sort of feel like all worry and stuff like that. Like I've had that situation before where I'm like, oh,
Tape deck.
well, like why won't this go? What? No. My version was Aya's replay on the iPod. I just put that song on replay after a girl didn't want to be with me.
Okay.
And like I remember I used to write down and I need to get back to this, to be honest with you. I used to do
Mm.
journaling, or even just like when something was going on, I'd write it down.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
I looked back at it. And this was maybe when I was like 17, 16, 15. I looked back and I was like, what was I whining for, bro? Like, you know, like with perspective, you're just like,
Yeah.
what was I whining about? Like, this is not that deep now. But like
Yeah.
at that age, everything seems so deep.
Mm.
Um, but I guess reflecting back to your question, I guess I don't know, because like you said, yeah, I think there is a time for when you should be able to just be in your feelings and then understand,
Mm.
okay, what can I do next? But I think it's just also it's also just, I guess, as men or just as a person in general, like if you're wanting to better your life, if you're wanting to do better and to be better, then I think then you've got to take change. You've got to have action. Um, there's a there's a dude called David Goggins. I don't know if you've heard
I've heard the
about him.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude's like honestly a crazy guy, like was a Navy SEAL, but like he came from a really bad background. Like I think there was domestic abuse in his home. He was fat. He wasn't the best at education and stuff like that. And to see where he is now, he does everything extreme, like to the middle, like, but even just when I was reading his book, you just hear how he's like, you need to take action, like you need to do something. And even if doing something is like going for a walk and clearing your head, and then maybe, okay, like you just thinking to yourself, like, okay, can I make a plan? Or even just like, say if you're feeling sucky about your relationship, say if you're like, oh, I can't communicate properly, or, I can't do this, listen, we live in the age of Google and podcasts. You can go and find a podcast where people are talking about self-improvement, where people are talking about things that you can do to better yourself. So, and that's the thing as well.
That's how old I am,
like,
Tinduka. When I wanted to find something out, I had to go to a library and get a book. You're 2 clicks away from anything you want, including morning pizza.
Yeah, including morning pizza. The margarita is tasting real good right now.
But is it a case, because you mentioned, and this is where we come back to this, what is manly, and the expectations there. And, from my background, I was in the SAS. You've got the SAS in Britain. You know what those guys are like.
Yeah, tough motherfuckers.
Yeah, so that's where I was posted to in Australia when I was in the army. So I've jumped out of airplanes and done all that kind of stuff. And to be frank, none of those guys were extreme. I mean, yes, they could do extreme stuff, but if you didn't know, if you weren't there on the base with them, if you just saw them in everyday life, you would never know these guys. One of the most lethal guys there is a friend of mine. His hobby was sewing. He took in my pants when I lost weight. That was his hobby. But man, he was a snipe.
You would never think, would you?
Yeah, and this is what I'm wondering about when you talk about was it the Goggins guy, and they go, and does everything to the extreme. Now, I can do things to the extreme, but that's not how I want to do it. My thing is, here down at the beach house, I got rid of the garden. I bought a self-propelled lawnmower, not one that you sit on, but you walk behind, just so I don't have to push it. And I go out and I be Forrest Gump and just go up and down the lawn just to have some space. Is that okay as well? Is that, or do you have to be this Goggins, extreme type thing?
No, I think that's sort of, I guess, what I try and do at Black and Raw, but then also, I guess, what's beautiful about the time that we live in is that you can just be yourself. You can be anyone you want to be. And I think we can have the best of both worlds. We can be manly. We can be the dude that's extreme and stuff like that. But then we can also be the SAS dude that loves to sew. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, so I think there just needs to be sort of an acceptance of whatever being a man means to you. I think you should take that. But then I also think there shouldn't be shame on either side. There shouldn't be shame given to those men that like to problem solve, that like to be, aggressive and stuff like that. But then there also shouldn't be shame on the femininity side of masculinity in terms of the soft skills, the emotional skills, the dude that loves to sew, man, that's great. Like, let him sew, because you know what? It's a skill at the end of the day. Like, I'm not gonna, like, if I can do my own clothes and like when I got rips and holes, one, you're saving money. Men, we love to save money. You also can make your own stuff as well. So I think no shame should be given to both sides. Realistically, you want a yin and a yang of both. You want a yin and a yang of the masculinity and the femininity aspect of being a man, because I think that just makes us more well-rounded individuals. Like for you, like you said, you were in the SAS. I'd love to hear more about that as well. But you also have a kid. Like, you couldn't be the same person you are in the SAS as you are to your child. You know, you
Well, I've
couldn't
never
be giving
yelled at
him
my son
orders. Like,
ever. He's 14.
yeah,
I've never ever yelled at him, and he does his homework. He empties the bin, cleans the garden. Well, he didn't do it the other day, so I just put some of the rubbish on his computer and said, when he woke up in the morning, he's going, "What?" I said, "Well, you said you were going to empty the bin," and he goes, "Oh yeah."
that's a good
But
tactic. That's a good tactic. I'm gonna steal that.
but it was, yeah, from that perspective, and that's where I wonder, about that with having those skills. And again, I was pretty lucky. I had a very strong mum, and that's probably partly where I got. My dad says I get part of my fighting mentality from his dad, who was
Mm.
very very calm, very very calm, very very calm, very very calm, until you went way past the line, and then all hell broke loose. But he had a very 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 big tolerance. There's a story it was told. We were told
Good
afterwards.
patience.
He was in at the pub. I mean, he escaped from 2 concentration camps in World War II and was shot twice.
Wow,
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty.
crazy.
And we never knew a lot of this stuff until after he died. But where I was going with this was, I look at, for example, the part about being in the SAS. I mean, I wanted to leave school. My dad said I wasn't allowed to leave school unless I had a job. Well, about 2 weeks later, the army recruitment people came around, and I was like, "Cool, I'm out of here."
I got a job, Dad.
I got a job. I can do that. And then I get to army, in basic training, and we're running around the bush because in Australia we don't have a forest and we have one bush. So I'm running around the bush, and I'm going, maybe this isn't a good idea. And so we get, so we're getting to the end, and I was mature enough to recognize that I wasn't going to get one of the good jobs. There was signals and all these, fancy jobs, but there's only a couple of positions. And there was a lot of people who were more mature than me. And I was mature enough to recognize I wasn't one of those people.
At least you're mature enough to recognize it's not you.
Yeah, exactly. And anyone who didn't get one of those good jobs, they went to infantry, which is, again, more running around that bush, which I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
But there was one position no one was going for. And I was like, oh, yeah, and I thought about it. And it was a chef's position. But my first thought, I'm 18, women like guys that can cook. That was my first thought.
Yeah. I love our thought when we're 18 is, what do women like?
Yeah, that was my first. Well, women like guys that can cook. So it was like, cool. The second thought was it gets me out of the infantry. And the third one was, I might be able to use it as a career if I got out of the army. So obviously my priorities, you could see what my priorities were. And then I ended up, so I was at the school of chefs, learning to be a chef. And one of the guys on my course got asked, did he want to go to Perth? And he said no, because he'd just come from there. And I said, I'll go to Perth. And for me, I'd never been to Perth. It was as far away from home as possible at the time. And I said, well, yeah, if you do pass the psychological test, you can go. And I didn't think anything. I didn't ask what it was or anything like that. I'd gone and done the psych test and passed it, get in my car, and I drove across from Melbourne to Perth. And I get there and I'm posted to the SAS. So I got to cook and jump out of airplanes and shoot things and do all that kind of stuff. Rock climb into caves, abseiling into caves and, fly. Anyway. But it was just from that perspective, and you're talking about this softer side of things, having that, being able to do that. Is it difficult for guys to do that? For me, it's never been a problem. I mean, I know women like guys. 3 things for guys, for younger guys listening out there: be able to dance, be able to cook, and have a sense of humor. You get those 3, women love you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We were at a Christmas party a few years ago, and one of the guys was there. He'd never danced with his wife ever, and we're sitting there. And,
what?
Yeah. So and we were, and this is where I'm leading into where this. But so I was talking and explaining, talking about it and mentioning about how women like that, and they reward you and things like that, and just encouraging to get exactly. And then later on that night, I was out on the dance floor, and there he was on the dance floor with his wife. And so I've gone over and I said to her, is he going to get rewarded when he gets home? And she goes, oh yeah, he's going to get so rewarded when he gets home.
I love it. You should have known that this can happen.
This, what is manly type thing is, you talk about having that well-rounded thing. Is that part of how do we get to that confidence to just be able to do that? Because I'm not sure why. I can't remember. I think he did tell me why he didn't dance. I think he might have been embarrassed or felt that he couldn't do it or something like that, if I vaguely remember correctly. But what is it, do you think, that stops guys from doing that? Because obviously if you have that connection, if you're with the right person, firstly, date the right person. No amount of skill can fix a poor partner
Yeah.
choice. I learned that too late in life.
Sorry,
But if you're with the
but
right
yeah.
person, as a guy, those little things are going to be appreciated. And what do you think stops guys from doing that?
So I think this is for anyone as well. Like, I think you just got to get to a point where, because I think when we try and do those soft things, like when you're with your lads and like you're talking about maybe the things you do for your girl, and they're like, "Oh, you're this, you're that. Oh, you're so wet. Oh, you're a simp." And then like
Simp,
you
I
sort
haven't
of
heard
then
that.
get,
What's a simp?
yeah, a simp, like sort of just like someone that is sort of just I don't even know how to describe it. You know what? Some people say, "Oh, you're a simp if you do nice things for your girl," which is like, is that really simping? But someone that's sort of, I guess, trying too hard, being submissive towards women, maybe. Like that's
Okay.
sort of how
Submissive. Yeah.
simping
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think you've got to get to a point where you just don't give a crap about what people think about you. You've got to sort of like have just a confidence in yourself that it's like, okay, I can do, like, for, like you were saying, for that SAS dude, like he's in the SAS, but he also likes to sell, but he's doing something he enjoys. He's
You
doing
wouldn't be
something that he
calling him a
loves. Like,
simp, that's for sure.
you wouldn't be called, yeah, exactly.
Well, if you did, you'd be like, no, actually, you probably could, because he probably wouldn't care. That was most of those people there, and I was in that
Yeah,
category.
exactly.
He didn't care what someone said because you didn't have to prove you were tough. You were tough. That was the thing.
Exactly. But I think obviously, we're not all in the SAS, so we all can't have stuff to prove that we're tough. But I think you've just
Is
got
that
to
what we all
not
need, as
care
men, to go
about.
to the SAS and then go,
Yeah,
okay, you are tough,
pretty much.
just relax now.
You're tough now, or be a boxer, or be somewhere where you punch somebody. You know what I mean? Like, or rugby. But I think you've just got to get to a point where you're like, I don't really care what others think about me. Because then you can just go and do whatever you want to do, and you don't have to feel shame. I think there shouldn't be shame around being soft and being nurturing and being kind, but there is for men, and I think that leaves us in quite an unfortunate place. But what I'd have to say is, you've got to get to that point where you don't care.
Isn't that really courage, though?
And for that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is courage. It is courage. It is confidence as well. It's stuff that as men we're told to have, but then because at the end of the day, if you have shame, you're scared of what someone thinks about you or how someone interprets your actions. But yeah, the courageous thing is just to be like, listen. And also at the same time, I think one thing which I'll even tell you, like, so I used to get rejected by girls a lot. I used to like girls that were my friends. And I just had to, never works. But like by the time you realize you like them, I mean, I always liked them because we really got along and we shared interests and we hung out all the time. That's then when you start to like them. But I had to get to a point where it's like, okay, like at the end of the day, I know what I provide to somebody, and if someone doesn't see that, then that's on them. They're missing out on all this greatness. I had to build that self-confidence in myself to just be like, listen, it's okay if you don't want me, because at the end of the day, you're missing out on something that's great. So I think we have to build that confidence to be like, who cares? I'm going to dance with my wife. And guess what, bro? I'm going to go and have sex when I get back home. It's going to be all great. I don't care what others are saying about me, because I know that my wife is going to love this. And then we're going to go and have a good time when we get home. So I think that's just what you got to do. You got to have the courageousness and the confidence to be like, I don't care what you think about me.
How do you do that? I mean, because I like that. I mean, that analogy you've got there. And I'll tell you, I mean, when I look at my relationship with my dad, and I have a great relationship with my dad now. It wasn't always that way, but I mean, when I look back at when I was younger, we certainly there was some good stuff there. Obviously, as a teenager, a little bit of a few issues there because I knew everything.
It is always rocky parts.
but I noticed recently, I mean, because my dad and I, you know, we'd tell each other we love each other, give each other a hug every time we see each other. No problems with that. And it was interesting. I was down visiting my dad, and we're out at it was a bar type thing when some of his old workmates were there from like 50 years ago or however long ago, from when he, you know, did apprenticeships together. My dad's 78-ish, somewhere in that area, 75. And so when he was doing apprenticeships, he's known these people for a long time. And so I was there with my dad and doing some stuff, and then I was going. And I went to walk off, hadn't really thought about it. And my dad goes, "Oi!" And he put his arms out. I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, hug." So I'd gone over and given him a hug. And one of his workmates has gone, "Oi, what are you guys doing?" And my dad just turned around and said, "Oi, he's my son, I'll give him a hug if I want." And it was like, and I mean, I'd never seen my dad. We've never been in a situation where anyone said that anyway. But it was just interesting that, and I'm just wondering, how do you get to that? Because I didn't ask my dad about that. But you know, just how does someone get to have that confidence and go, "Hey, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do, and if you don't like it, suck it up, princess."
Yeah. It definitely takes time. Like it's
Yeah.
not something which can sort of happen overnight. Like I said, like when I was saying about when all the girls were rejecting me, like it took me till about like second year of uni to maybe just be like, I provide what I provide. So I think what you've got to do is you've got to know yourself. I think a way for you to start is by knowing yourself a lot more, knowing like your tendencies, knowing what upsets you, knowing, you know, how you approach certain situations. And then I think then doing the learning part of it of, okay, and I think this is where, when I used to journal, which I keep saying I should go back to, which I need to, I think journaling helps you look back on, okay, oh, this upset me in this way. Why did it do this? So like you can start to really have that self-reflection. So I think you've got to start with the self-reflection, and then you've got to then be like, okay, where can I improve at, or what am I already strong at? Like if I'm quite an emotional, resilient person, that's great. But like, what can I do if, say, you know, I have low patience, or how can I improve my patience? Or if you figure out where maybe your weaknesses are and then you can improve upon those too, I think that will also just build a natural confidence in you, but also recognizing where your strengths already are, because sometimes we never really look at ourselves. Like we always are like, oh, I lack this, I lack that, I like that. But like, what strengths do you have? Because you do have strengths. So see the strengths you already have and then build upon those weaknesses, and then you're just going to be stronger. So I think that is then when you can be like, you know, that after that self-reflection, after that, okay, what strengths do I have? Then you start to be like, okay, actually, no, I do have this confidence. I do have this, I do have that. And you get to know yourself more. And then maybe when then someone says to you, oh, why are you being girly? You're like, well, I'm not really, and I don't really care, because what I'm doing is making my wife feel appreciated, and she's going to appreciate that I appreciate her, and that's going to make my relationship with her healthier and stronger. What even are you? Like, what are you even doing? What are you even saying? You actually know nothing. I'm just going to continue with my life and continue making my wife happy, making my family happy, making my kids happy. Like giving your son a hug, bro, come off it. Okay. there's nothing wrong with that. If anything, like it's biologically and psychologically much better to give your kid a hug. So what are you doing over there? You know what I mean? So like, and I think there's things where, especially then, if you maybe go into the process of then you're learning more, you're like, oh, maybe he actually doesn't understand what happens when you do this, you know, where as I actually have the knowledge, you know what I mean? Everyone likes to feel superior above others. So if you can build upon your strengths.
Well, is that the
be
case
like,
too? I mean, from that, when someone says something like that, is it also reminding yourself maybe that everyone has an opinion, and opinions are like arseholes, most of them stink? Is that
I love that.
is it just having that, you know, because we have in share.care, we rewrote the Knights Code. We're trying to look at, what are some guiding principles, and the Knights Code was really cool. So, and we're looking at going, well, and one of the principles we rewrote it slightly because it had to not take offense at the opinions of others, but we added in at the start to laugh at yourself and not take offense at the opinions of others. And how powerful is it to be able to, if someone makes a joke, and rather than get defensive, you go, oh yeah, because I think we've all, and you've probably done this as well. You're walking down the street and you trip and you sort of have a little fall and you go, oh, I'm a little embarrassed,
Yeah.
and so I used to do that like everybody else, but then I made a conscious shift and said, actually, I'm going to own it. So whenever it happened, so I remember I tripped over once and I turned around and went, yeah, and everyone's going, yeah. And it become, because I laughed at myself and didn't take it as something that was offensive. I wasn't offended by it. It became nothing to worry about. You look like pizza's coming again.
No. So I was asking at the door. That's all. Carry on.
Ah, cool. But is it? I mean, from that perspective, and you mentioned a couple of times there, we're talking about confidence and finding this confidence. And I have a program called Fearless where we deal with that and I break it into 3 parts. And the first part is experience, which is something like Michael Jordan will have. Because Michael Jordan, he has practiced so many times throwing a ball into a basket, he knows he's likely to get it in. So that's experience. Whereas confidence, and we've all got it. I don't know who studies these things, but people do. Apparently, when you were a baby learning to walk, on average, a baby tries and falls down 8,000 times before they actually learn to walk. And that's what confidence is the ability to keep getting back up. And we've all got it. Well, unless you're still crawling around, which I don't know if we've all gone through that. And then the other component of that is self-esteem, which I draw a lot of that from Wayne Dyer, where self-esteem is you have an internal candle flame within you. And that's how much you like yourself. And it doesn't matter what anybody says. Whatever happens, trip on the street, you like yourself. It's different from your behaviors. You might screw up. You might do something really stupid. And you go, well, that's my behavior, but that's not me. I'm a good person. And it's being able to separate that. So no matter what happens, you like yourself. Do we need more education around that? Going, hey, just because someone can do something fantastically like a Michael Jordan, that's experience. Yeah, he's played, how many shots, done so much practice. Don't compare yourself to that unless you've done the
same. Yeah.
Focus in this part here where, as a child, you just kept getting up. Even you were clear about what you wanted. I'm guessing as a child you wanted to be like her, even though you might not consciously have been aware of it. But is that what we need to be teaching the boys, as you say, to go out there and just say, look, I'm going to do this, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says?
Yeah, definitely. And I think some people can probably then interpret that of like, oh, what about if he's, showing bad behavior and stuff like that. Obviously, if someone's doing like, Trump recently got indicted for, what do you call it, for sexual harassment. So like if you're doing stuff like that, of course, you know what I mean? But like I think in terms of just going out there and being confident and doing things that are good for you, that are good for society, that are good for people around you, then yeah, definitely. I think there does need to be more education given to kids. And we could get into the education system. That'd be a whole nother conversation. But I think there's a lot of things which
we probably have a lot of common thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can imagine. So there's a lot of things which school don't teach you, in which I think would be like much needed, in terms of like self-esteem, in terms of confidence. Like I used to have quite a low confidence. I think I used to have a low quite self-esteem as well. And like it does hinder you, because then you go and you do stuff, or you don't do stuff based on what others are going to do or what others are going to think. And at the end of the day, then it just limits your enjoyment of life. Like some people don't ever want to go and solo travel. I know there's women that don't want to do it, but I think there's more safety reasons for that. But then there are women out there that do go out and solo travel and that everything is okay. So, or like I'm at work currently, and I finish next weekend, and I'm going to, I don't know if you've heard, they're an Australian band, so I'm hoping you heard of them. them, of the Teskey brothers.
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're in England, so
Ah, cool.
and no one else wanted to. I don't know anyone else that listens to the Teskey brothers, so
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm just gonna go to this concert by myself and rock out. Like I don't care because I'm gonna go and have
I
fun,
love that. That's awesome.
and I can go and I think I'm quite a confident. I say I had low confidence, but I'm also quite confident at the same time. I think the confidence differs in different spots of my life, but
Yeah.
like I can go out and I can talk to someone on a podcast who I've never met, or I can talk to somebody at a concert. So like if I'm there at a concert and I'm like, oh, I could just talk to the person that's next to me because we're both rocking out to the same person, you know what I mean? So we both already have a shared thing in common. But I think there are a lot of people that will have low self-esteem, low confidence. And I think it's then just going back to seeing what your strengths are, because then you can be like, okay, oh, actually, I'm not as I think I used to have a mentor and he used to say, like, if whatever statements you're saying in your head to yourself, whatever words like you're demeaning yourself with, he was like, write that down and then like see if it actually correlates with what the truth is. Because like once it's written down and then you're like, okay, wait, is this actually true? Let me get some for and negatives for this point. Like, am I actually dumb? Well, not really. I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. Am I actually lazy? No, I exercise, I do. So like the words we tell ourselves, like write them down and like actually look at it and be like, is that actually true? And then if it is, more than enough time, it won't be true. But if it is, then at least you can go and do something about that.
Yeah. I love that. And the part I want to explore with what you're talking about, and I'm not sure how much you experienced it at the younger age, but I hear, I mean, there's a lot of younger men that are, kind of scared to interact with women because they're worried about what the person might say or saying the wrong thing. And you, although again it's before your time, but I encourage you, if you like movies, there's an '80s movie called Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze in it.
Okay.
And
I've heard Patrick Swayze is a guy and a half.
Yeah, and well, he's a bouncer in this movie, but he has a doctorate in philosophy, and his whole approach to the bouncing is be nice. And that's when he takes over the thing, he says, ask them to leave, be nice. If they won't leave, help them, but be nice. And so that's his philosophy. It's you'll get a lot out of this from it's an awesome movie.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering,
Roadhouse,
I had that experience recently where I was talking with a lady and she was becoming a bit aggressive. And I just politely said, look, I'm happy to have the conversation, but the tone and the approach you're taking, that's not appropriate from my perspective. So if you're going to continue that way, I'm not having the conversation anymore. And she stopped and she adjusted her behavior. Didn't complain, but I had that approach of, this is my boundary, but I'm going to approach it in a nice manner, drawing from the Knight's Code, use your strength for helping others and approach things in that, in a polite, respectful way. Do boys, as far as confidence, need that when interacting, going out into the world to go, hey, I can go out there. And if someone behaves in an appropriate way, rather than fighting back, so to speak, because you're going to be deemed to be aggressive because you are stronger by, men are physically stronger. And the court, I've spoken to family violence officers in the court, and their approach is men are stronger. So there's a risk there. So there is that risk. So it's not me just going, oh, it's my opinion, men are stronger. They are.
Yeah, we are. We're biologically stronger. Yeah, as well. We're biologically stronger as well.
So from that perspective, is it, to help young boys getting out there and interacting, going, hey, you can react differently. You can still put a boundary there, but you can do it in a nice manner, like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse.
Yeah, and Patrick Swayze, he was also in Footloose as well. So I think he's the ultimate.
That's Kevin Bacon, but I think you're thinking of Dirty Dancing.
Oh, Dirty Dancing. Yes. It is that one. Yeah. But yeah, I that's interesting, and I like I'm gonna watch that film because it sounds really cool. But then I think in terms of that philosophy of being nice and just being, I think you can. I think if you're aware and you're being present as you're talking to somebody, you can maybe gauge. I'm maybe not all the time, but I think you can maybe gauge how a conversation is going, how a woman's energy is around you and stuff like that. And I think one really easy thing to do is just ask questions. Like for
Oh,
talking to women, like
I love you,
just
man.
ask
You're
them
awesome.
questions. Thank you, thank you. And you know what? I like. There's a lot of stuff which I guess I, in terms of self improvement and things like that. There is a reason why I was like, because I never used to look at myself and be like, okay, I'm not the most handsomest of man. Like I'm a bit chubby as well and stuff like that. But I'm a bit of a lover boy, in terms of being a hopeless romantic. But I sort of got to a point where, like, when I've been saying, like, I used to get rejected by girls a lot. Like, I got to the point where I was like, okay, if I'm not the most handsomest of guys, I'm gonna then be the most self-aware,
Mm,
emotionally intelligent guy. I'm gonna use my intelligence to, like once I've got a woman, like she'll realize how great I am.
mm,
So I think, yeah, just ask them questions, like just be interesting, like also like develop on, like if a woman's like, oh, you know what, I really like pizza, like don't just say, oh, I like pizza too, like add a story into that. Be like, oh, you know what, me and my sister used to make
I was doing a
pizzas
podcast
together.
and the pizza
Like,
came mid-podcast.
yeah. Tell a story with it, add onto it, because then it makes you
Well,
look
what pizza do you
interesting.
like? What do you like on your pizza?
Yeah, what pizza do you
Me?
like?
Do
Yeah. What do you
you want
think
me on your pizza?
pineapple on pizza? Now I might be a bit suggestive, but
Maybe too early.
the
Maybe
right
not in
girl,
first conversation.
the right girl might like that though. You got to gauge it a little bit.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's
um,
it. But I love what you've said there about ask questions, because I have a very high-end negotiation program which I use for large corporates, and teach them. And as far as sources of power go, asking questions is right up there at the top. Listening, asking questions. I'm giving away the secrets of my course now. It's $100,000 course, and you're getting all
yeah.
this for free. All the listeners.
You don't need the
I'm not
course,
negotiating
guys.
very well. But listening, I love asking questions. Obviously, if you ask a question, you want to listen to the answer, and silence, taking the time to actually listen and be silent and not thinking about what you're going to say next, but really listening to what's going on and having that silence. So I love that you've gone there with this asking question things for guys, because a lot of times, I mean, I find, when it's like this story from when I was in the army, there was a guy in there, Shane, and he was always dating these absolutely amazing women. They were beautiful, they were intelligent, like lawyers and doctors and stuff like that. They were kind, and they worked for charities and stuff like that. And we're looking, going, I mean, he's a reasonably good looking guy. And my friends and I
You're
are
like,
looking,
how did
going,
you get?
yeah, it's like we're going, he must be well hung or something. It's like we're going,
That's what
but,
we all think is like must have a
yeah,
big dick.
it's either money or money or the other thing. But I went up to him and I said, and I did. I literally said this. I said, Shane, you're not that bright. How is it that you're dating? I said, how is it you're dating all these amazing women? And he turned into this wise Obi-Wan type character. He put his arm around my shoulder and he looked at me and he goes, Damien, what you don't see is I ask a lot. Most of them say no. You just see the ones that say yes. And I was like, oh, wow. That as a life lesson, just not just with
Yeah.
dating, but it was, so from that perspective, I mean, coming back, and that's where I was raising the self-esteem point of view. If someone says no, that doesn't mean, you're not a good person. It's just you're not a good fit. As you say, and
Yeah,
I
you're not
love
the
that
right
you went
person.
there with that.
Yeah.
What does I write down? I know that
Oh.
someone, if they don't see that, then that's their problem. I kind of can't read my handwriting.
Mm.
I'll work it out later. But it was like, you're okay with you, and if they don't see it, well, I mean, it's just not a good fit. And that comes down to
Could
that.
I take? Could we take a quick pause if that's okay? Sorry, go on.
No, that's all right.
It was my.
And just for the listeners, we had another break there. We had to there was a comment that
Order another
passed,
pizza.
and we had to we just had to go and look at the comment and cry at its beauty. Um, I don't know.
I wanted to add on to that in terms of what you said about your friend that just asked loads of went out there and like just asked women.
Yeah.
One thing there's always there's always a dialogue in terms of that. Oh, women like the bad boy, the dude that like why do they never like the nice guy? Like, like I would treat them right. Why do they always go for the guys that, they know they're gonna hurt them, but they do it anyway? And I think you've got to understand the psychology of women in that aspect, because it's not that they want to like the women would love to go for the nice guy, but the nice guy isn't confident in himself. Like I thought I was a nice guy. And I realized that one, I was lacking confidence, and then two, I was then treating like women who I was like, oh, actually, I don't want to date you. I was then treating them badly because I was like, actually, I'd rather go and date these other women. And so you're not really the nice guy, but you're just sort of, you're just not there. But I think for what women like about the dudes that are the bad boys is that they've got the confidence to just go up to and be like, yo, let's do this. Like, I like you. You look great. There's a confidence, there's a swagger about them. And that's what hooks the girls originally. And that's what gets them. So like, if you as a nice guy, to be fair, if you can generally be a dude that is a nice guy that maybe just doesn't have the confidence to go out there. Just gain that confidence and just go and just say, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. And I know that's scary. And when someone would say that, when I would hear someone else say that, I was like, yeah, but no's just like, oh, it's reducing me. It's so scary. But like, it generally isn't. It's just that it's like, no, it's like, okay, cool. She might not even be in the right headspace to date you. Maybe she's saving you from being in that relationship. You never know. But you got to have that confidence and that swagger. My girlfriend was telling me, she was listening to this podcast about this dude that dated 100 women in a year. And he said that like, yeah, it is exhausting. It sounds exhausting. But he said that like some of these girls are really, really hot. And he said I was like a 4 out of 10, the guy. And he was like, really? What most girls responded to was literally me organizing a date, like being like, let's go here at this time. Will you come with me? And he said that's really what women responded to. So like women are also simple creatures in that essence. They like the parts of men that make us men in terms of we like to plan. We like to be like, let's do this on this day. Now, their confidence. So that's all. That's like once you unlock that little secret sauce, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah. I love that. I love that story because it does come down to exactly what you're saying. I mean, that's my experience as well. When I was younger, there was I had a projected confidence, but it wasn't real confidence underneath. And it'd go all right, and then all of a sudden, I remember a girl that we were going out, and there was some good stuff there. But then she goes, you're actually not that confident. She actually said that to me. It was like
she saw
through it. But that's exactly what you're talking about, that having a direction, I found it was one of the most attractive things. You know where you're going. Now, not everyone's going to be aligned with that. That's okay. That's where you go, okay, they're not aligned with, but I'm going in this direction, and that has that confidence. But on the point that you're talking about there about organizing a date, that kind of thing, I remember there's a guy called Mark Gungor, and he's in America. He has a program called After Weight or Better Marriage. But he talks about exactly what you're talking about, but how men and women organize points differently. We give each other points differently. And he says, you never, and I knew this beforehand, but you never surprise a woman because you might go, just say it's her birthday coming up. And you're planning, this surprise party. So all leading up to it, you're pretending that nothing's happening. And all that time, she's getting madder and madder at you because you haven't remembered her birthday. And then she comes home. You've got this wonderful party prepared. She's angry because it's her birthday. You haven't said anything all day. And you get home. Everyone's there for a surprise party. Not only that,
Yeah.
she isn't dressed for it. She hasn't got ready for it. And so it all goes haywire. He said, you just never do that. He says, what you do, and because they allocate points differently, you can actually get massive amount of points by doing nothing. He says, what you do is you organize, the party or the date or whatever it is 2 weeks in advance. And you tell her, say, look, honey, I've got this organized, got babysitter for the kids if you've got kids, I've got this all set up. And he says, you haven't even done it yet, and you got points. And then every time she thinks about it,
you get more points.
You get more points.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he said, woman being a woman, she's going to be telling her friends about it. And every time she tells her friends about it, you're getting points. But on top of that, the other guy of the girl he's losing points because he hasn't done the same thing. You get a twofer.
You're stealing points at that point,
Exactly,
what I mean?
yeah. But it's interesting what you're saying there, and coming back to that whole confidence. It's knowing, being okay with who you are. And does that come back? You mentioned about journaling a couple of times, and I think part of where you were heading with that, or underlying in that, is gratitude as well, because you mentioned about liking the things that you have. Do you think that, from a perspective of when you look at you finding your own confidence, do you think that journaling and recognizing the things you have as opposed to things you don't have helped you find that confidence or find that self-esteem?
Yeah, hugely. I'd say hugely, definitely. That does help. Journaling, like I say I do these things, but recently I've been quite poor at doing things. I need to get back on the saddle. But in terms of
But when you don't need it
meditation,
anymore, you do it because you need it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I
All good
I
now.
used to do a lot of stuff like that, a lot of reading, and I don't do much anymore because I don't need to. I have these conversations, which helps in a lot of ways. So I don't need. I learn
Yeah,
so much from the
definitely.
talking with people. But is that?
And
I just wanted to understand how much that gratitude helped you with your self-esteem.
Yeah, I think it definitely did, to be honest with you, because you even just like when you can look at what you actually have rather than what you lack, it then also helps change your perspective on life, because if you're always thinking about, oh, I lack this, I lack that, like, of course you're going to be sad because all you're viewing is what you're lacking rather than what you're having. And I think being able to journal, being able to have gratitude, even I would say like listening to podcasts as well, like listening to podcasts like these, but like listening to podcasts, there's so many out there. You can probably find a podcast on anything these days, but like you can hear what others are saying or what others are doing, and you can gain really good nuggets of information from what other people are doing. And so I think there's loads of and I think what is great now about this time that we're in is that, as you were saying, you had to go to a library to look up stuff, but like now, you
So I
can
didn't
just go
read
on
much.
Google.
That's too much
But
effort.
you can, yeah, exactly. But you can, and now you got ChatGPT. If there's a book which about self-improvement that you don't actually want to read, you can just ask ChatGPT to summarize it for you. Like,
I love
there's
it.
no, I think there's nowhere where, and I don't know whether maybe this is the struggle that I think as men, we are seeing our women being empowered and having self-improvement, which is all great and everything else like that. But like, I think as men, men have sort of been forgotten about in terms of that. Women are now becoming breadwinners of families, and that's bringing a different power dynamic. So like, as a man, if you're not the breadwinner, what can you bring? Like, and I think some men have a loss of identity in terms of, oh, I can't bring anything. But like, there's so many other soft skills and things that you can bring, and emotional intelligence, like, and you can still bring in money. Like, there's nothing wrong with your wife being the breadwinner, but you can also still bring in lots of things, and you can make it a lot more well-rounded. And so, yeah, I think there's so much information out there now that you can't afford to sort of slack behind because you'll get left behind.
But what do you
Because
think
they're
that is?
then
Because
going to be
men, like in university, men, I think it's only about 40% of men get university degrees. What do you think is the driver for men not wanting to do that?
You know what? I actually generally can't. I can't lie. I generally don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't. I
Yeah,
have no idea. Like, why?
because
Why not? I
I've read
mean,
articles this year, at the start of this year, talking about when you talk about gender equality, when you're talking equality of numbers, not opportunity, but equality of numbers. And when you look at the more human, it's not so much in engineering and those type of physical fields. Men still do that, but certainly in your more going to say humanitarian and lawyers in the same sentence, and that doesn't work.
Humanities and stuff, yeah.
But in those soft skill type areas, which were dominated by men originally, now they're struggling to find men to fill the roles in them, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been in humanities sort of subjects. Like I did psychology and criminology at A levels. I did philosophy also at A level.
What was it like? Was it more men than women in there, or were more women than men?
More women than men, and a lot of them. And I did psychology and criminology at university for my undergraduate. More women than men. I did social work, more women than men. So yeah, there's a lot of those soft skill sort of professions, which I think, I don't know, because we need more men in those situations. You know, like social work, I think is 80% majority of women, but like there's boys that like would rather have a male social worker because they relate with them more. So I don't know whether there is just still a stigma in terms of like, oh, we can't be doing those roles. But then also what's weird is that we talk about institutions that mainly have female employees, but then if you then go to the heads of those departments, they're mainly men. So that's also a weird one where it's like, yeah, like social work, I think the large percentage of like social workers are women, but then senior leadership is men. So
that's an interesting point that would be good to look at as to what that dynamic is. It does happen a lot where, you know, and why does that happen? Although, I mean, you go the other way too. I mean, the CEO of GM is Mary Barra, and she's, you know, pretty strong leader.
Yeah.
I love her
probably
opening
quite
speech.
a male workforce.
I wasn't there, but I understand it was, you know, what she said was she had a new plan that they were going to do for GM moving to electric cars and things like that. And she goes, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, okay, here's the plan going forward. If you don't agree with the plan, that's okay. We'll arrange an appointment with HR and find somewhere else for you to be. It was her attitude. It was like, pretty sure you're either on board or you're not here. Which is pretty strong leadership when you look at it. But just, I mean, do guys get intimidated by girls that are strong leaders, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Don't like women on top?
And I think, no, they don't like women. Is this a relationship podcast?
Bit of double entendre
there. Yeah. But I think definitely. And I think
why?
I think it's
what is scary about a strong woman?
I think it's just a socialization. Like there's a girl called Vika Tivu, and she's a like UN leader and stuff like this. She's doing fantastic work. She's also Zimbabwean as well. But we've had conversations about her in the family, and we're like, yeah, men would be intimidated by her because she is so successful at an early age, which is not her fault. That she did that's not on her. That's on how. It is awesome. It's amazing. You know what I mean? Like we need to see more of that. And so I think for men, it's an insecure thing. It's like
that's what I'm
if I can't be the best, if I can't be the top, then like I can't have my woman doing better than me. But it's like if you really want to be in a relationship, if you really want to care for somebody, it's not about who's better. It's about how can we make each other better. So it's taking the ego away from yourself. It's like it's not about you. Like and also if you just do your own thing, if you just try and thrive in what you do and love what you do, then like a successful woman is only going to add to that. She's not going to take away. And then you can also add to what she's doing rather than pulling her down, because why are we pulling our women down? There's just no point, you know.
Well, that's what I've noticed with the people that I know that are in those strong relationships, where strong women relationships. And even though she's a killer in the work, at home, she's really, I mean, you look at the behavior and she's extremely supportive of her husband. It's insane that the relationship I've seen where she's, partner of a law firm or whatever, she's massively supportive of her husband and massively, ferociously defensive of him as well. So he's in this like really cool position. Some specific friends that I'm thinking of, it's like, she's a powerhouse, very intelligent, and he's very comfortable with that. But not only is she this powerhouse, but she's also got that the same defensiveness of her husband as well. And I'm like, why is that scary for guys? I'm trying to work out what's intimidating about that. That's really cool.
I think it's just how it makes us feel, how it makes men feel. Like I genuinely think that's all it is. I think it just makes them feel insecure about themselves, and
Is
how
it
we talked
their
about
own
that loss.
insecurity though, or is it the person makes them feel insecure?
It's their own insecurity. Like I can't remember where I heard it. But I think they were saying, like, usually when you have a feeling towards somebody, like if someone is like you say someone's making you feel something, or like say if there's a relationship in a problem, you're usually projecting your own insecurities onto it.
Yeah.
So like they say, look at yourself first. So I think there's a lot of that where it's like I'm projecting my own insecurity because I'm not where I want to be in life, and my wife is doing great and she's thriving and she's succeeding, and I'm just here just being a bum. Like it's more about yourself,
being
because
a bum,
then
you've
if
probably got reason to feel
if you're being a bum, then
get
you're
off your
being
ass
a
to do
bum.
something.
But like if you're not where you want to be in life, it's more the frustration you have with yourself rather than what your wife is doing. Because what your wife is, she's just doing what she's doing. That's just how you are externalizing your own insecurity.
Yeah, because I mean we've circled around that a lot, and I love that the conversation has been around being yourself, but being secure in yourself. And it seems to be, if we're looking at a framework for being manly, it's not are you a condom full of walnuts, Arnold Schwarzenegger type thing, but you're I like making you laugh. It's cool.
Thanks. I like laughing.
But it's having the confidence to say, I choose to be this type of man, and that's who I'm going to be. And if you don't like it, I'll find other people to be around who do like it. Is that where we're heading with this?
I think it's pretty much what it is.
Well,
it's
that's your word. I'm just paraphrasing it, but that's what from what if I'm listening to you correctly, that's what I've been hearing.
No, you are listening to me correctly, and you have summarized it perfectly. Yeah, just it is about being yourself and being comfortable in yourself, and that, like, I think improving, like trying to always be self-improving, trying to always be better, like recognizing your own strengths and then improving on your weaknesses. And yeah, just being yourself. Like at the end of the day, like be yourself because everyone else is taken. I've heard that so many times.
I love that. That's awesome. I haven't heard that before.
But it's true. But it's true, isn't it? So why not? Why not?
Yeah. So what would you, if we're going to sum this up? We've talked for a little while now. Actually, this is cool. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's if you were to sum it up, if you were, because I'm kind of lost touch a little bit. Oh no! Before we get to that point, one of the questions I wanted to ask you about was male mentors, and I'm just wondering, because you look at the world today, and certainly from what I've seen, I've been to London a few times, and I certainly know here in Australia, you have there's women gyms and there's women this and women groups that and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that. But you can't have a male gym because it'd be deemed sexist. Have we lost? Because I look at it, and again, I'm kind of lucky. When I grew up, I'd go to play. My dad would play golf and lawn bowls, and I would go with him to play that. And so I would then go around the golf course with him. But then very quickly, maybe because I was annoying, he sent me off with other people. So be a group of guys would get together, of my dad's friends, who would and then I'd go with 3 other guys, and 4 to 4.5 hours walking to 18 holes of a golf course. You have a lot of time with these guys, and from what I can remember, that I mean, I'd obviously have questions because I'm a young kid. So I was asking questions, so I learned to ask questions. But I had these role models that were guiding me, and in a way, providing that role model for me. But I'm just wondering, have we lost a bit of that because you can't have the men's groups, so to speak, so much anymore, or whether guys have lost that ability to have mentors around? Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think in terms of like, I think just generally as society, we've been doing less things together. We've been
Mm,
becoming a lot more isolated and individual. So I think, and I hope COVID maybe shone a light on that and realized how much we actually need each other a lot more.
mm,
Um, but I think, yeah, I think we have lost it to a certain extent. But like, I think they're still out there. I used to run an online men's group, and I'm gonna get back to doing it again.
mm,
But there are men's groups out there that are doing things like for men. I think you just got to go and find them, because
mm,
once you want, and even if you just do a little bit of looking, you will find them quite easily. Or even as we've talked about, for the sporty lads, go out and join a team. Like I
mm,
recently joined I started basketball last year because I think after COVID, I'd always done the sport like throughout uni, throughout school. So I always had that male camaraderie. And some of my best friends from uni was someone who I played lacrosse with. And
mm,
like you always get that nice camaraderie amongst men. Um, and so I think, yeah, find a men's group, find a sport, or even yeah, find something along those lines where you can then maybe get off other men. Um, and even if you want someone to be a mentor to you, like if there's a man that you think, okay, this guy's really cool, like drop him an email. Like there's no
mm.
harm in asking. He might say no, but then that's okay because you asked. Or they might be like, yes. Or they might be like, I'm not free currently, but I know someone else that might actually be really good for you in this.
Yeah, I love that what you said there, and I just want to highlight that because I mean, for the young people listening, for your audience, because I'm a lot older, and I'm pretty sure I'm over twice your age. But from my experience, that has been the
Just,
case. I've actually gone out. I mean, I've gone to and found there was a number of multi 100 million, hundreds of $1 million net worth, and I've actually written them a letter, found out where they live, wrote them a letter asking some questions and put it in their mailbox, and they wrote back. And other people I've asked, I've got to know it and said, "Oh, can I buy your coffee and ask you some questions?" And they've said yes. I've yet to have someone, and they're very busy people. I mean, obviously, be polite about it, but it was just really wonderful how all these people just said yeah, just because you asked.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised. You generally be surprised what people would do. And if you ask kindly and they say no, that's okay because everyone has their own lives. But generally, they might just be like, "Yeah, I've got 10 minutes here, so just
Mm.
figure out your questions." So yeah.
Yeah, really cool. So if we'll come back to where I was going before, if we were summing it up, and summed up as being your own person, being confident in yourself, choosing who you want to be, and just be that person. Um, is there, how would you, if someone was, in that space of lonely, lost, not feeling useful in society, what steps would you give them to actually get out of that and move to this place of this framework of being manly, of just being yourself?
So I would say definitely first, like, look at, like, if you're feeling lonely and isolated and stuff like that, if you do have friends, I know some people don't have friends, um, but like if you have family, um, go out and just, spend some time with them. Like connecting with humans can be really good for our own mental health and for,
Mm,
it releases dopamine and serotonin and all of those good feeling hormones. So I would say go and connect with somebody. And then
mm,
once you've done that, it doesn't have to necessarily be in this order, but then also, yeah, I think do the gratitude thing. Look at what you have in your life. Like, if you are sad and you're living next to the ocean, like, bro, you're living next to the ocean. I know things might be going on in your life that are really like upsetting and really traumatic, but you can literally wake up to the sound of the earth moving its tectonic plates and the moon controlling the seas. How's that not majestic? How does that not make you feel a bit better about where you're at? And if you're not living by an ocean, it's fine. But
and if you're listening to a tape deck and not a CD, maybe you've got cause to be depressed. But you know,
yeah. Yeah, if you just have the song on replay. But yeah, I think looking at the gratitude and then also looking at your own strengths. Like, if you're in quite a lonely place and you keep talking to and you keep telling yourself, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that, I implore you, just get a book, get a piece of paper, write down everything that you are saying to yourself, and like look at it and be like, is that true? Is this not true? Or even give it to your mom or your dad and be like, this is what's going through my head. Are they true? Obviously, your parents are going to be like, of course they're not true. But like, at least you get someone else to be like, yeah, they're not true because look at this and look at that and look at this and look at that. And then you can be like, oh yeah, actually you're right. And that can start to help you unclog the narratives that you tell yourself. And then yeah, like I said, look at your strengths, find out what your weaknesses are, try and improve on those. And then work on that, and then continue processing, continue building, continue growing, continue challenging yourself, putting yourself in situations which you think are scary, because once you've done it, I think then you gain that confidence. You know, we're talking about Michael Jordan hitting shots, you know what I mean? Like every shot trying to hit, practicing, improving. And so when those big moments come, or when doubt comes into your head, David Goggins in his book talks about the cookie jar. And he's like, we all have things that we've done before. And he's like, when you're really struggling, you just put your hand into the cookie jar and you take a cookie out. Like, the cookies is a metaphor for the stuff you've already done. You've already got this in your bag. You can do it because you've got all these other experiences. Like Michael Jordan's cookie bag would have been huge when he was in the game. You know what I mean? He's like, I can shoot this shot any day of the week. Or Kobe Bryant or anyone else. So
I've got Oreos, man. I got
I got the Merle, man. I got the double chocolate chip. Easy.
Yeah, love it.
So yeah, that'd be my answer. That'd be my answer for someone that is feeling lonely, that is feeling like they're not manly. And also challenge what you think is manly. Crying, nothing wrong with crying, bro. We all love a good cry, man. I'm telling you. So it's okay.
I was like that. Enter Terminator 2, lowering into the bit molten. I'd bawl my eyes out, man. He's like, you
can cry at anything, bro. It doesn't even matter, bro. It doesn't even matter. If it sparks emotion in you, it's okay. I cried when I watched Black Panther. Like, it's cool. It's cool.
I'm terrible like that. There's certainly I've been in movies and it's like I cried in Cars 3. I think it was. I'm in the cinema with my son. It's like
have I watched Cars 3? I can't remember. But yeah, it's a good. Those are some good films. Actually, I do like the Cars movies. They're good. They're good. I can see why.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, I love what you're saying there. That advice, just do that. Write it out. Question anything that's negative. I love that. And just be you. Choose what is right for you, and find your tribe. Be around them. But I think, I love that. That's awesome. It's Tinokuda, it has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show. Thank you very much for taking the time. It's been so much fun. I'll hopefully catch up again in the future.
Definitely. It has been a pleasure. I've loved being on someone else's podcast. So, I think it's really good. So yeah, definitely we'll do something. I want to, like I said, I want to go to Australia at some point. So, hopefully we can meet up at some point.
We can, man. Get together, put a shrimp on the barbie. That'll be right.
Oh, yes. Love barbecues. So yeah, we can do it. We can do it. Crack a beer open. Don't know if you drink beer, but yeah, we'll do something.
Sounds awesome. Tinokuda, wonderful having you on the show. And yeah, looking forward to catching up again soon.
Bro, have a good day, Damien. Thank you very much.
And cut.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.